Well, as you can see the visuals there, the king greeting the Minister of Social Development, Minister Lindiwe Zulu. Minister Lindiwe Zulu, let me be clear, accompanying the president, because the king is accompanied by the Queen Mathilda, and the president having a discussion with the two. And I think what is critical during this visit is South Africa's quest, and particularly Belgium, to increase trade between the two countries. The trade, as we speak, stands at more than 100 billion US dollars, but of course skewed in favor of Belgium. I'm not alone. I'm with Abongile Tumako here. Abongile, politically, the visit is very important.
Certainly, Ma'am Sophie, good morning. A critical time for South Africa politically, if you look as well at the fact that in our country domestically there are quite a lot of challenges we see transpire. We've seen the presidency letting us know that some of the things that they'll be discussing, the two leaders, would be the issue of energy. Remember, energy continues to be a challenge for us here in South Africa, and certainly the issue of tourism does feature quite prominently on some of the discussions that are going to take place. Remember also, the king is also expected to jet off to Cape Town sometime this week to actually talk to further business leaders there in that part of the country.
Quite an important area here at the Union Buildings. As you know that in 1956, thousands of women marched to Union Buildings to hand over a memorandum in protest of the past law. Coincidentally, it's March, it's the Human Rights Month, and you would recall that it was during this month in Sharpeville 63 years ago, where more than 60 people died because they were protesting against the past law. But women have led the protest for many years, including the land. You'd recall that in 1913, women converged in Bloemfontein, where they were protesting against the brutal regime introducing a very cruel laws in relation to access to land, the dispossession. And we know that since 2012, when the ANC was formed, the battle has always been around the land. And there the president explaining what's happening there. In Sesotho, we call that stone lelwala, and then the little one inside, kitshilo. In other words, women in the countryside and in the villages long ago, even now some of them, they use that stone and that little stone to grind the maize meal, to prepare, to have a maize mill grinding the maize, which speaks to women have been working hard physically to ensure that there's food on the table, but not only that, they fought for the land. Women were the first to protest against land dispossession. Women have been brave. In 1956, even before 1960 Sharpeville massacre, women took to the streets in thousands, and irrespective of their political inclination, color or creed, fighting the unjust law. And the president there explaining to the king and the queen. And coincidentally, you know that Belgium, a former colonizer, particularly in the Congo, where the king is still blamed, the king Leopold, who is still being blamed for atrocities that were committed in Belgium. The king, when he visited DRC recently, did extend some apology, but people are saying he didn't go far enough to apologize in relation to atrocities committed by the colonizers on the continent, and with us, our colonizer, being the British. As you can see, the writing there, this is what I was talking about. This was done to commemorate and remember those women when they took those steps. And the only surviving woman who handed over the memorandum is Me Sophie de Bruyn. And I think at some point in time, Abongile, we have to take time to speak to Me Sophie de Bruyn. We have to document her history.
Certainly, with the role that she has played and being the one of the few that are remaining, we're part of that 1956 march. We have to take it ourselves to honor her, because I also think we need to sort of give her the honor that she deserves for the role she played, and she must know that South Africa appreciates her role. And of course, as you've alluded on those days, the president, they're going on to explain some of the detail that we see there that signals and symbols the importance of that march of 1956 that was staged here at the Union Buildings by those women who were saying no, no, no to apartheid.
Yes, indeed, women playing a very important role, and I think the president is relating the story, a very important story. The good thing with the state visit, all the time, whoever walks down there, the president is there to explain. It's a long-standing tradition which speaks to putting women's struggle at the center all the time. So I think it is very important to always remember that and to always do that, particularly as we approach the International Africa Month in May and later in August, the Women's Month. But I think the other important issue, Abongile, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology will be accompanying the King, where they will be looking at the science facilities in South Africa with the aim of enhancing manufacturing of vaccines. As you know, that Belgium has many pharmaceutical companies, and they did help us during COVID-19.
Yes, certainly Dr. Blaine Mande will actually go to CSIR here in Pretoria, the capital city. This is, of course, where the South Africa-Belgium Business Forum will also be partaking in those discussions. We also expect the King, including President Cyril Ramaphosa, to make an address there. And, of course, the issue of vaccine at the center of those discussions. So, of course, South Africa and our efforts, if you like, to try and be compatible in the international community when it comes to manufacturing those vaccines will be critical as to how Belgium assists and how South Africa assists the Belgium as well, to ensure that at least there is some progress in as far as those talks are concerned. Of course, Dr. Blaine Mande will be accompanying the president, as you've rightfully said, and go to CSIR later on today.
And also the Minister of Trade and Industry, we know that the Business Forum will be looking at how the two countries can increase trade relations so that this 100 billion, perhaps next year or years on, we will be talking about more than 100 billion. And at the critical time, when I spoke to the Minister of Finance earlier on, talking about the economic challenges that we are facing. But as you pointed out, the issue of electricity, because Belgium is part of the European Union Commission, and we know that the European Union Commission has made an undertaking to assist South Africa in addressing the issue of energy supply. You can see now the two leaders will introduce the delegations from both sides, and formalities thereafter. After formalities, they will go inside. But there's still going to be a national anthem. And today, rendering the national anthem is the army. We know that all the time different wings of the South African Defence Force get invited to do the formalities when there's a state visit. Let's take a listen at the army band. national anthem of both countries. As you can see, the King will soon be observing the Guard of Honor, and we have men and women in green. That's the Presidential Guard. You also have the Army Band that is going to render the national anthems of South Africa and also of Belgium. And the King there is about to walk down to observe the Guard of Honor.
And of course, quite an important exhibition that we see coming out of the Union buildings today. This, of course, Mamsof, is cementing those long-standing relations in the two countries.
To take a salute for the South African flag, and of course the band will render the South African national anthem, Nkosi Sikelel' Africa, with all its components. And as I pointed out today, it is the military band, not the Navy, not medical, not Air Force, but it is the military band. And the famous spot where the president liked to engage or perhaps speak to whoever he's hosting, explaining the landmark Pretoria is as a seat of government with very historic sites. And very soon we will hear the national anthem. A delegation from South Africa led by Minister Naledi Pandor in terms of ministers who are here. I see the Minister of Environmental Affairs, Minister of Finance, Minister of Arts and Culture, Minister of Tourism. Very important.
Very important. Remember, Belgium is amongst the top 10 countries who are participating in our tourism.
There's the president leading the king, and the president is going to introduce his delegation. And as I pointed out, starting with Minister of International Relations, our ambassador to Belgium, Thokozile Xasa, you know, she was a former deputy minister. And of course, next will be, let me see, Minister Togo Didiza, the Minister of Agriculture
and Land Reform. The issue of land you did raise earlier on in as far as our country and the struggle is concerned. And of course, next would be
Minister, I think
basic education.
Basic education for education, and of course it will be Minister of Environmental Affairs when we talk about the clean energy and environment, and Minister of Tourism. Minister Dili, who has just started in her new portfolio. The Minister of in the presidency, also responsible for intelligence there, Minister Nchabeng, you can see her. And they are continuing, and the next will be Minister of Transport, Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, and Minister of Public Service and Administration. And the next one will be Minister of
Sports,
Arts and Culture. You know that in terms of people relationship, the two countries, the Minister of Arts and Culture will have a very prominent role to play in terms of strengthening the relations. And the DG in the acting DG in the office of DERCO, and also DERCO there, earlier on it was the DG, Me Baleni in the presidency next to Minister Zizikodwa. You know that as we speak, the DG in particular, DERCO, they are working on a presentation by legal team of government in terms of the current situation where South Africa finds itself in relation to the warrant of arrest that has been issued to President Vladimir Putin by the ICC, even though the Russian Federation is not a signatory to the Rome Statute. But I spoke to the DG earlier on, saying that they are looking at this issue, and they will be looking at the legal perspective. And now they are going to meet the Belgian delegation. You can see there the president, and I think when you look at portfolios, ministers who are here, clearly in terms of Belgium, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, of International Relations yesterday, Dr. Naledi Pandor, saying that they've brought a high-powered delegation because of interest in investing and in strengthening the relations between the two countries.
And of course, we've seen that powerful, delegation being sent here with the aim, Ms. Mokoena, to again strengthen those relations. And of course, there is also the relationship that was strengthened about 2 years ago, 2022, where the deputy ministers had a forum between the two countries to actually look at ways that would also help further advance these trade relations. And of course, you highlighted the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Hadja Labib, from Belgium. We see them there being introduced, of course, by the President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Immediately after this, the two leaders and the Queen, including Minister of Social Development, will go inside, but the President will have a private meeting with the King, and that's where they will really be able to be free to talk about even burning issues. And as I pointed out, you have to touch on what Belgium is doing in addressing the challenge in the DRC as a former colony. The minister arriving yesterday from the DRC, where Africa is trying to find a solution to the current political and security challenge DRC is facing.
And I'm sure that's when they'll be able to talk frankly during when the two leaders meet behind those closed doors to actually get to the crux of what's happening there in DRC. And of course, you've just pointed out, Ms. Mokoena, that they are former colonizers in that country. What's their view in as far as what transpired there is concerned? I think that it will be an opportune moment, of course, beyond other issues that they'll be talking, to dwell deep as to basically how they're going to tackle that one with regards to what's happening in the DRC.
Yeah, the president, as I pointed out, that moment where he's talking about different places here in Pretoria, the historic sites, as you can see, the Voortrekker Monument. And you know what's the history behind that monument. When we talk about the colonial era and also the apartheid era, these are places that really tell a story of a country that has experienced lots and lots of changes, and the masses being oppressed in different times, but finally free. The debate continues whether that freedom has kind of delivered what the masses expected when they were fighting for freedom. That's what the president is talking about. They're talking about that landmark.
And if you notice, every time when he hosts, a delegation, state visits, you can see the passion with which he actually tries and explain the surroundings around here at the Union buildings, including those monumental and those historical, sites here in Pretoria. You can tell that there's passion. He's willing. He's going all out to ensure that his counterparts do understand where we come from as the country, and especially if you look at the fact that we are now in a democratic South Africa, but there are still challenges that are facing South Africa, and of course, that need urgent attention from government and, of course, the international community.
That reminds me of the delegation that is in the country as we speak from Sri Lanka. They are here to get support, information, and sharing of skills and knowledge in terms of how they can deal with the reconciliation process in Sri Lanka. When I spoke to the minister yesterday, she spoke about quite a number of meetings with different role players in South Africa, those who were at the forefront during the negotiations, including the legal mind, Johnny Dilange, who was there, and also talking about Senior Counsel Dumisan Zebeza, who led the TRC investigation team. So there's a lot to learn from South Africa. It is not just trade and investment, but also in terms of how the world can resolve the challenges we are facing in relation to different conflicts on the continent and around the world. And now they will go to the office of the president, where the two leaders will be talking privately.
Yes.
Before we see the opening remarks between the president and the king, and it will be a closed meeting thereafter. After that closed meeting, they will come out for closing remarks. No press conference today.
Yes, of course, the presidency quite firm in saying that there will be no press conference today in as far as what those talks would have been about, but we'll be given an idea of how deep and how much of content that was being discussed there to actually enhance these trade relations. And of course, Mama Sophie goes on to say it's more than just trade relations. There's a lot to learn from South Africa.
On that note, let's hand over to Johannesburg.
Stand like this. 2020, when we extended an official invitation for this state visit. We have had to contend with a global pandemic that wreaked and wreaked great devastation on human life, livelihoods, and the global economy, a series of natural disasters around the world, and since last year, a war between Russia and the Ukraine that has sparked a global cost of living crisis. We are indeed living through difficult times. Never has the imperative for global cooperation been greater, and never has the need for greater global solidarity amongst people in the world been even more urgent. I wish to express our appreciation to the Kingdom of Belgium for its role in the global fight against COVID-19. Belgium is an important donor to the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, for the operation of COVAX, the COVID-19 Vaccine Global Access Initiative that we formed. Belgium has also donated more than 10 million vaccines doses, of which a significant proportion were sent to countries on our continent, Africa. Belgium was also one of the earliest backers of the World Health Organization mRNA Tech Transfer Hub initiative in South Africa, operating from the understanding that long-term solutions are needed to address inequitable access to vaccines and therapeutics. Today, Belgium is a partner in the mRNA Transfer Hub in Cape Town, and I do hope that you will find time when you are in Cape Town to have discussions with some of our South African colleagues about this. One of our companies, Afrigen Biologics, is collaborating with Belgium's Universals Group to develop a novel mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. This cooperation will ensure that we are better prepared in the event of future health emergencies and towards achieving our goal of producing the first African-owned coronavirus vaccine. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine is of great concern to all of us. As South Africa, we continue to emphasize the importance of finding a peaceful solution to the crisis. As you rightly said in 2013, Your Majesty, dialogue and reconciliation can change the world. And this is what we believe is important in as far as bringing that conflict to an end. As South Africa, we are encouraged at the growth of trade and investment between our two countries, and that our respective tourism links are also developing. There has been good cooperation between our two countries when we were both members of the international bodies such as the United Nations Security Council and currently on the United Nations Human Rights Council. I believe that much more can be done for our bilateral relations to grow and to expand. And certainly during our tete-a-tete, we both expressed that wish. When it comes to our respective histories, we share some similarities. They include contending with a painful past, striving for national reconciliation, and building a common, united future. This should form the basis for greater dialogue between our two countries, because we have much to learn and much to share with each other. Your visit, Your Majesty, will add momentum to this process. It is our wish that this is an opportunity to foster greater cooperation between us and consolidate the relationship that our two countries have had over quite a long time. I want to thank you and thank you and your delegation for being here, and I do hope and wish that your visit to South Africa adds to strengthening the relations between our two countries. I now hand over to you for your remarks.
Mr. President, thank you for your kind words, your warm welcome. We are delighted to be here in your country for this visit, this state visit, the first state visit in Africa since a long time. And your country is very important to us, to Belgians. We know your country well. We have also a large number of Belgians who live here. Mm-hmm. It's between 10 to 15,000 people. South Africa is playing a very important role in the world, is representing Africa through the G20 and the BRICS that you will preside soon. But by this visit, we want to emphasize the collaboration and to increase, to bring it to a higher level, to foster more collaboration in all kinds of sectors. And as you said in our private meeting, that you are impressed by the delegation we brought. Indeed, we have a strong delegation of government, federal and regional. We have also a business delegation that you will meet later on. Thank you for that. And we also have universities that are looking for exchanges and of students, but also the research. We have cultural actors, and we have also social entrepreneurs. We have two interesting social entrepreneurs, which I hope you will meet, having wonderful projects. So we are very, very enthusiastic to collaborate and to make the difference by this visit on so many fronts, be it in the climate change and the just energy transition, the public health issues and the equitable access to vaccines, as you rightly said, the clean energy such as hydrogen, but also social inclusion. And our companies that are investing here and want to invest more are very keen on this topic, the social inclusion. They want to work on that. And if you allow me, maybe I pass on the words to Minister for Foreign Affairs, and then the Minister Presidents, they can say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Your Majesty, and thank you, Mr. President, for the warm welcome here in Pretoria. We had, yes, a warm and extended conversation with my counterpart, Dr. Pandor, this morning about many international issues, and I take the occasion, because I didn't say it, to say how we are grateful for the collaboration we had in the past in the UN Security Council, and that we have in the Human Rights Council right now. And so we see the defense of the multilateral order as a priority. We also thank South Africa for its very extensive contribution to peace and security efforts in Ethiopia, in Mozambique, and in the DRC. The contribution of South Africa troops in regional initiative is really particularly appreciated. And on the DRC, I must say that we are very concerned about the situation in the East and the risk of a further regional instability, and that's why we are pushing at the EU side to do more with concrete initiatives, especially in the field of the reform of the security sector. We are also looking closely at the democratic process in view of the next election, which will be really challenging considering the situation on the East Congo. And on the situation in Ukraine, this is the major foreign policy issue for Europe, and it will likely remain so, I'm afraid, for the next months. We are fully committed to help Ukraine defend itself. We see this as essential to defend European security, but also the UN Charter's principle. But we understand South Africa's choice to remain aligned in the conflict, which is a distant one for your citizens. And but we have always looked up at South Africa as the key partner for peace and the defense of human rights and basic international principle. So given your strong historical links with Russia, we would be delighted if you consider using your channels of communication to advance on a path toward peace based on the international principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We thought maybe after your intervention, Your Majesty, we would then allow our ministers to then make interventions. And we often find that once the two heads of states have spoken, the members of the media usually would like to take time off and go and rest a little bit.
May I suggest?
By all means.
May I just say something,
Yes.
Mr. President? I want to say something about Mr. President Mandela that
Yes.
you mentioned.
That's right.
I was here in 1994, and I will never forget the emotion that I felt, and it will stay. It's part of me. It will stay part of my life. Since then, I've been always following what's going on in your country very closely, and this country is very dear to me, and also, of course, to our people in Belgium. But this whole period and what your country has done is remarkable, and I just wanted to say this.
Thank you, Your Majesty. And indeed, in our tete-a-tete, you did, as actually we were walking, you did say and disclose that you were here in 1994 and you saw how President Mandela was inaugurated. So what I did want to say is that as we allow the media to go and rest, because this is their siesta time, we will continue. But what I had also wanted to respond to the Minister of International Relations from Belgium, that yes, indeed, we do and we continue to use the channel that we have with Russia to talk peace, to talk about how the conflict can be brought to an end. So you can be rest assured, as other heads of states have raised with us, that we do take up the opportunity to advocate for a peaceful
All right, the official state visit of Belgium.